Hey guys, this is Coach Brian. I am bringing you the 1-2B notes. This was all about pairs of angles. To start off with, we need to start with the most kind of fundamental pairs, which are complementary angles and supplementary angles. Complementary angles are any two angles that add up to 90. So as long as the combination adds up to 90, it's going to be considered complementary. Even if it's 89 and 1, those are complementary, okay? 70, 20, 48, 42, 50. Literally, if the two angles add up to 90, they are complementary. And the same thing is true for if angles add up to 180. They are supplementary. Now, the unique thing about a 180-degree angle to remember is that it forms a straight line. So if you have angles, it could be more than two angles. It could be three. It could look something like this. If you have, as long as you have a straight line, there could be, I'm just going to exaggerate here to make a point. You could have a 30-degree angle here. You could have a, let's say, in between there, that's 40. Up here could bring you 20 more. You could over here, let's say 60 more, and then split it one more time just to be extra. That's 70, 90, 150. I'm going to say this is 25, and that brings me up to 165, and this is 15. So you can see there's an example of 6 angles, but they all together form a line. They all together add up to 180. So we would say that these angles are supplementary. So example 1 says angle A and B are complementary, okay? Now, complementary means that they add up to 90. So I know that the part plus the part equals the whole thing. And so if angle A is 42, I don't know angle B, but I know they add up to 90. I can just solve this like any other equation, and I can subtract 42 from both sides, and angle B equals 48 degrees. Angle B equals 48 degrees. And I can do the same thing on the next example. It says two angles are supplementary, so I automatically know they add up to 180. So the part plus the part equals the whole thing. One of those angles is 152, so 152 plus the other angle that I don't know will bring me to 180. I can subtract 152 from both sides, and that unknown angle should be 28 degrees. Next, we've got adjacent angles, which I'm going to show you by the picture here to define them. Adjacent angles share a wall. Do you see how these two angles are sharing a wall? You see right here, angles 1 and 2 share a wall. Angles 2 and 3 share a wall. They are adjacent. When two angles share a wall, and by that I mean they share a common, sorry, I already put my quotation marks. They share a wall, and that wall, by geometry terms, is what we call one of their rays. Okay, one of their rays is shared. So they share a wall. A linear pair is adjacent angles, so they have to be adjacent, which means they share a wall, but they also are supplementary. They adjacent angles that are also supplementary, which means they add up to 180. So if I go look back at the picture, you can see these angles share a wall, they share a ray, but they also together form a line. So you know that these two angles together add up to 180 degrees. And over here, 3 and 4 share a wall, and they form a line. So you know that together they are 180 degrees. Lastly, we've got vertical angles, angles that are across from each other. They're across from each other at an intersection. The important thing about vertical angles is they are congruent, which means same size, same shape. So let's look back at the picture. When you see angles like this, see how they're formed by the intersection of two lines? I've got these two lines going on forever, and they just happen to cross each other right at this point. Well, these angles that are across from each other are congruent, and also these two are congruent with each other, okay? Same thing over here. These are congruent, these are congruent, because they are across from each other at an intersection. I'm going to skip example 3. It's just asking you to look at some different angles and tell if they're congruent or adjacent or a linear pair. I want to jump ahead to this page. A theorem is anything that can be tested, that you can test/prove, and then once you prove it, you can use it as a reasoning for later proofs. So we've got the linear pair theorem. It's what we just talked about. If two angles form a linear pair, then they are supplementary, which means they add up to 180. Well, see how these two angles form a line and share a wall? Because they do those two things, I know that together they add up to 180. And so I can set up an equation that I can then solve, and I can find out just what x is. And then once I know x, I can solve each one of them for their individual measures. So if x equals 22, then I can plug 22 back in there, and that will tell me that this angle is 72 degrees, and I can plug 22 in here, which will let me know that this angle is 108 degrees, and if you double check, those two should equal 180. I can do something similar with these vertical angles. Remember, vertical angles are across from each other, so they're considered equal. And I can use that to make an equation. I can set them equal to one another. Since they are equal, I can move all the x's to one side. I can move all the whole numbers to the other side. And I get that x equals 27. Once I know that x equals 27, I can plug it in here or here. And I should get the same answer for both. So 5 times 27 is 135 minus 2 gives me 133. And 4 times 27 gives me 108 plus 25, which is 133. So these two angles are the same. These last 4, we're just using those principles to set up equations. So I'm not going to solve these for you, but I will help you set them up. These angles are vertical, which means they are congruent. Congruent means that they are equal to one another. So I can set up an equation like this to solve. Example 5, I've got to look at this little symbol right here. This symbol means that the angle is a right angle, which is also 90 degrees. And these two angles that create it must be complementary. So I can take those two angles and combine them to get my overarching 90-degree angle. And then lastly, these two angles are a linear pair. It's in the instructions. So if one of them is 2x minus 8 and the other one's 3x plus 18, I know that together they should combine to give me 180. So this is how you set these 3 up. I'm going to leave them for you to solve. And hopefully this helps you. This is very important moving forward throughout the rest of this course to understand these angle pairs and angle relationships.